Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Core Energy Experience. I'm your host, Kurt Bruckman. I hold my mastery in core energy dynamics. I'm a global certified coach. I am an internationally acclaimed best-selling author, and I write for Brains magazine. Our guest today is a dear friend of mine, James.smith. He's a restaurateur and a financial advisor. We are here with Alex Fabio, our co-producer and associate director. Now here's our conversation with James.smith. Hey, there you are, my friend. How you doing, James?
Doing great, Kurt. How are you doing?
I'm doing really good. Good to have you come on. Really excited about this. And the audience is going to love it. You and I have been some friends for some time. We have some really good history, a lot of fun, a lot of pain and sorrow through the years too, but mostly we've risen and here we are today. So with that being said, James, if you don't mind, I'd like you to give the audience a little bit of background about James.smith, who you are, and then we're going to take it from there, if that's all right.
Sure, great. Well, first off, thank you for having me. I appreciate getting to be part of your program, and I've always been a big fan of yourself, and you've helped me out in my past lives a few ways, and also helped out some people in my family too. So it's a credit to who you are as a person.
Thank you for that.
Name's James.smith. I'm currently a financial advisor. I have a wife and 4 kids. I got, 2 kids in college right now. One kid who just got out. He started a job in the city a couple of weeks ago, finally getting one off the payroll is the goal. And then I have a daughter that's still in high school. I live in a nice town in Rumson, New Jersey. I'm originally from New York. I met my wife down at my the old job that I met Kurt at years ago down in the NYMEX, and I also own a restaurant with my older brother Chris as a side business on top of that. But that's about the long and the short of it.
Yeah, well, there's a lot in there, so let's unpack that. James, you've had some tremendous experiences. So you brought us currently, and we appreciate that. Let's talk about our meeting on the floor and what we did up there, so the audience knows. Some of the audience that's been following us, I've heard a little bit about it, but I'd really like to get in there deep with you today because I know you and I can do it and talk about the energy that we experienced down there and the constant flow of it. So if you could start describing what you were feeling over, because you were primarily in the crude pit, and I was in the precious metals, gold, silver, copper. So we were in a little bit of different sections, if you will, on the floor. So if you could sort of frame it from there, James, that'd be great.
Sure. Yeah. So originally, I was hired out of college. I went to school at Bloomsburg University. When I was going through college, I was interning down at the NYMEX through a company called MBF. And then I first started working, as you said, in the crude pits, heating oil and leaded gas as a commodities clerk. Clerk was a guy that would be in charge of a couple different brokers, their day-to-day positions, their profits, their losses, making sure that the months and the wattage of whatever they were trading at the moment would coincide with what I had on my book. Because as you well know, if your count is off or there's a lot of guys down there, it's a very intense atmosphere. You're dealing with dollars and cents at all times. So any mistake that you make could cost you dearly. And I've seen that over the years and stuff. But, I eventually transitioned and moved into natural gas more predominantly. I started out as a clerk for about 2 years. I did 2 years of summer interns. When I got done with college, I played like 2 years of semi-pro football. Wasn't really getting me to the next level, so I knew I had to start paying my bills. And then was a clerk for a while in crude and heating oil and leaded gas. Worked for a lot of really good guys, a lot of fun guys. Some guys that were, tougher than most, but for the most part, it was like a reawakening of your senses down there because you could see the excitement and the energy that was kind of brought every morning through into lunchtime, past lunch, and into the close where it would get really kind of crazy. But It was a pretty funny transition coming from college, where you're used to the college life and the camaraderie of it and the fraternity of friends, going that and placing that right into a workplace in the same sort of environment where it's camaraderie of friends and acquaintances, but now you're dealing with monetarily positions on products that you have to learn on the fly.
Yes. And if I may, so we can set it up a little bit more for the audience. James or I were in the Commodity Pits and World Trade Center. It's a massive floor, a couple thousand people roughly, right, James? Somewhere in there?
Yeah. Yeah.
And as we mentioned, different quadrants for different products, as James just laid out. So we were in what we call commodity trading pits, which was each was an octagon, and most of them had 8 steps down into the pit. So the majority of the larger business, the execution was done on the top step and or the second step, but mostly the top, and then it would sort of go down by pecking order of volume. So the heavy volume was done up top, and then so forth, so down into the middle, where you had different people doing specialty trading, crack spreads, 2 months at a time. Mostly open outcry, yelling back and forth was done about one particular month or two, but really the most active month forward. So what James and I did. We had to sift through each one's how they presented themselves and how we made transactions. So James, if you could discuss that with the audience a little bit to enlighten them, because you're a big, tall man, very big and tall, and there are some that were as tall as you and sort of get washed in it. So if you could just sort of lay that out, you know what I'm saying?
Sure.
Give them a little visual.
I know exactly what you're saying.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, like Kurt had just explained, right, where the New York Mercantile Exchange, where they traded commodities, and there was a couple different floors to our building, like coffee, sugar, cocoa, silver, gold, unleaded gas, crude oil, natural gas. Those are all the commodities. So commodity is a physical product or unit that expires at the end of a month, and at some point somebody's going to take physical delivery of that. Where we were trading, a lot of us were speculative traders, where that we didn't exactly want to own barrels of crude oil that we'd have to park in our backyard. We were really just trying to catch the arbitrage of the price differential at any certain time. And sometimes you'd catch moves where the price of crude oil is going up, or the price of natural gas is going up because maybe there was a hurricane in the Gulf. And that's pretty much where we were trying to make our money, right? And it was an open outcry system of, every commodity had a month and a price for that month, and you would trade different months against that for those spreads that Kurt was talking about.
Yelling and screaming at the top of our lungs to boot, right, James?
Exactly. So, like Kirk said, I'm a bigger man, right? I played college football. I was a left tackle, so I was in charge of protecting a couple of friends' blind side back in the day. Did pretty good at it. My physical frame helped me transition pretty well into the ring. I know the funny part was Kurt was just saying how the ring is about 8 steps down. The top side of the ring, around every ring, were the phone brokers, where they were actually getting physical orders into the ring, and for companies that were trying to buy and sell their positions as well. A lot of these companies were, companies like, trucking companies or plane companies that needed to use crude oil or unleaded gas, or their electricity companies that are using natural gas, they use electricity to make natural gas, stuff like that. So those guys were dual brokers, where a lot of the lower rings, lower people in the rings were, speculative traders, what they called locals at the time.
Trading their own account, right?
Trading
money.
their own account. Yeah, I would trade my own money,
right?
Which was always tough to do, because you basically you eat what you kill. In that terms of stuff. But,
James, can you go there for a minute? How were you able to deal with the swings of the equity and the capital all day long, like every minute, right? It was every minute, so the audience can understand. This wasn't stocks are different, 3 to 5 day period of settlement, things of that nature. This settled in the moment at the end of the day, so there were massive swings. And James, if you could let the audience know how you dealt with all of that, and a little bit about, if you will, tag on about being an athlete.
Sure. Yeah. Well, it's interesting, right? So when you're trading your own money, I was set up with like a house account, so there I did have backing of certain monetary positions in case something went awry. But for the most part, I had a trading account with $50 to $150,000 to start with. That you basically had to earn your way to get into that. At the time when I was trading, I was a house account, but my boss made me work an overnight desk. And I would be picking up phones because there was guys were checking out positions that they could trade in London overnight if they had to offset positions. So every day some guys would be flat, they'd buy a certain amount and sell a certain amount, and some guys would take positions into the next day. And sometimes that's very lucrative, but also there's a lot of risk there, obviously, right? But the emotional, transition of feeling the, knowing that your own money's on the line it was tough to get used to, especially when you're trying to carve out a living, especially when you start becoming like a young couple together and you're saving for weddings. And, then one of the funniest ones ever was, I remember I went on my wedding with my wife, and we're paid for our own wedding, both me and my wife, and we were going to Aruba. And I remember like the 2 or 3 days prior to my wedding, that's all you can think about is getting married to this beautiful young girl, and
Nice.
you're going to live, happily ever after. And they used to call it the honeymoon hammer. As soon as you're on your way out the door, you make sure that you lose a lot of money before you get to the wedding. And it's just the way it worked out. It was kind of Murphy's Law when it comes down to that. But
Right. So you're saying that upon the event, before the event of having to put out the money, we were trading in the pit, and for some beknownst reason, we ended up losing instead of winning at the end of that period.
Yeah, exactly. And I think some of that is right because you're not 100% on your game at all times, right?
Right. The energy of money we're talking about now,
exactly.
right?
Yeah. Exactly. You're worried about something else where you really need to have laser focus when it comes to it. Because let's face it, anytime, because of its open outcry, anytime you opened up your mouth, you could, either make or lose thousands of dollars. And that was a perfect example of that was in when they had Hurricane Katrina, and I was in natural gas, and the market opened overnight. The hurricane came through, it basically knocked out New Orleans, but what most people don't know is a bunch of the pipelines, the natural gas pipelines, are in the Gulf of Mexico, and they basically wiped out these pipelines. And the price of natural gas went through the roof because there's going to be a scarcity of it. They're not going to be able to produce any of it. And at the time, I remember going into that trading day, and every time you opened your mouth, it cost you, could have cost you 10 grand either way. And that's something that, your original question is, how do you get used to, that kind of risk and that kind of, I think my sports competitiveness helped me kind of set me for that, knowing that, there's another play after that play, put your head down and keep working hard. Obviously, in those times of big equity swings, you want to listen more than you want to open your mouth. And you have to really kind of listen. The interesting thing about being a floor trader was it opened up your other senses.
There we go.
Sight, your hearing, almost to a point, and clearly when you're standing toe to toe with a bunch of men and some women, your sense of smell can work against you.
Yeah, it's so true. I have to tag onto that. So at one point in my career down in the pits, I was taking supplements and was experimenting with certain ones, and one was garlic. So I had a little garlic pearl that I would take, and I'd keep them in the booth. And when I'd feel a little mischievous, I would take one of the pearls and open it up. And then most of us, as you know, wore trading jackets. And I sneak up behind the individual and put the pearl in there and squeeze it so it would open up all the garlic and walk away, unbeknownst to the individual. So you can imagine the guys next to him would be like, "Oh man, what'd you eat for dinner last night? What kind of garlic dish did you have?" I didn't eat garlic, I swear. And then the whole discussion, argument, and then lo and behold, they'd figure it out. So
funny.
we did these little things to let the audience know to relieve some of the stress, because what James is pointing out, your senses are an ultimate alert. They are 100% going, however that may show up in the moment. all of them, and trying to mitigate all of that, and then the emotions of making sure you made the correct trade across the pit, which could be 50 feet plus. And we'd have a lot of these trades that others thought we traded with them, but we didn't. We were trading with somebody else. They were called out trades. We had to rectify those. How do you do that? With money. So back to James' point, there was tremendous pressure constantly about understanding the energy of money, and people like James did fully, because he lasted many, many years there on the floor. And before we transition away from that, James, I just want to announce something that, the core energy dynamics, the four main concentrations are simply that to start out with. And they're transition, leadership, performance, and well-being. And James, all people have all of this, and we're discussing some of it now, right? But then under that are other things. They're called influencers. And James was describing some of that when a storm comes, when things are influencing the market that we're not aware of in the pits. It just comes at us through the phones. And unbeknownst to, the news wires will hit, and then the markets go bonkers. So it's really difficult to all of a sudden go from a sort of a calmer state into this really erratic state of trying to, sift through the chaos and find the calm. So how did you do that, James? How were you able to mitigate all the outside influencers and be disciplined? And in the core energy, we talk about disciplines too, and that's another layer. But for today, we're just going to concentrate on transition with James and a little bit of other things. So how was that for you, James?
Yeah, it was. It was. It was at times. It seemed like like a piano on your back at times. Right. The pressure. The pressure of trying to make ends meet. The pressure of having positions on at a very volatile time. I mean, if Kurt, you remember, right? At the end of every day, there's a close. There's a 2-minute period where a lot of companies come in with extra orders and try to mark the price of where that commodity should rest at the end of the day.
Mark to market, right? We used to call
exactly.
that mark to market.
And there's guys on the other side of that. They're actually trying to push it a certain way. So that can create some hectic volatility. You got to try to remain, calm under pressure. I mean, I think maybe that's where some of my football and some of my sports competitiveness helped me out in certain areas. Obviously, you were alluding to my size. I mean, I was a bigger guy. When you're in a ring with 300 other traders, anywhere from 200 to 300 traders, and you're packed in there like sardines, you're going shoulder to shoulder. Some guys, I mean, some of the fun things we used to do is, I would give a good push this way, and I would see like dominoes about halfway around the ring because everybody was next to each other, and I could clear a ring if I had to on a good push, which was always the thing. And that was some of the stuff that we did to kind of, alleviate some of the pressure situations and stuff. But so you'd have the close at the end of the day, that's 2 minutes. And then at the end of the month, it's usually, whether it's the first business day at the end of the month or the third to the last business day at the end of the month, when these companies have to come up with the physical delivery of these products, would get very hectic because you did not want to get caught. If you weren't willing to be able to take in that crude oil barrels or take in that natural gas, BTU units, you had to be out of those positions. And that's when you needed to rely on a good clerk and your own mental capabilities to kind of keep stuff on. And then obviously if you get caught and your count's wrong at the end of the day, you'd have to go pay the piper, like Kurt said before, and find somebody on the phone and say, listen, you got to help me get out of this trade. Is there somebody on the other side that still has something, or I can buy something from to get my count flat? But definitely trying to keep, the awareness. It was difficult, and trying not to bring that home to like a new wife or a new couple kids was challenging, or talking to your parents on the way home from work. That's usually, the camaraderie of the floor was only the guys that were and women that were in those rings kind of understood that. And that's why a lot of guys, definitely, fortunately for guys like me and Kurt, we stayed out of the fray of some of the other things that those kind of environments bring on. I definitely had my fair share of beers after work.
Yeah, did we all?
But, some guys, need other things to kind of to relieve that pressure. And I think that what you talk about sometimes, Kurt, is, just, figuring out the stress levels and how you're going to kind of approach that in a mental fashion that can kind of keep you sane and in the moment without panicking.
Yes, and exactly, James, and you get it all. The awareness, the acceptance, the validation of it. This is all part of the core that we practice, and then it opens up opportunity to trust your process in the transition to the transformation. So I know it's a mouthful, but you've been talking about that already. So James, just to back it up a little bit, how were you? Because you have this fabulous demeanor about you. I really have to go there, and it's one reason why we attracted one another as friendship. I believe. Remember, we're multidimensional, so there are many reasons, but this one in particular, for me, James, is that your calm demeanor, man. I got to tell you. And I watched you from afar. I wasn't in the trading in the pits with you, but I would go over there and put my orders in, or just sort of buzz around and hang out, as it was. And gosh, I'll tell you, when shit hit the fan, you were able to. I didn't see you lose your temper, but maybe a handful of times, and it may have been explosive, but still, you would capture yourself. How were you able to do that? And back to the issue of decompressing, that only the people on the floor could really understand. How many wives and children just really never understood what we did, or girlfriends, or however, partners, however you want to say it. It's sort of this unspoken rule, and this is where I know James is helping us get out. So if you could go there a little bit more, James, would be great.
Sure. Listen, I think that, getting to that point, right? Like, I was fortunate that I probably had a little better support system than most. I had met my wife on the floor. She worked for the company that I used to clear through upstairs. So I think she kind of got it. The pressure of the situation is tough. Again, I would say that, your competitive juices come to it. I mean, Listen, I wasn't the best trader down there. There was guys far more successful, far better traders and stuff like that. But I always kind of relied on like what core values that my parents had kind of put into us, and I'm sure your parents put into you, is that, you're a man of your word. And you have to come and face the music sometimes. So if you had an out with somebody that maybe I sat on the other side of the ring and said sold 50, and there was two guys that were buying at the time, and they come back to me and say, "Hey, listen, you sold me 50 and you sold me 50," and I'm like, "No, I only sold you 50." That's when it would get very contentious. There'd be also, conversely, there'd be ones where I need to go sell something, because I'm long something and the market's coming off and it's costing me thousands of dollars, and there's a guy on the other side of the ring buying from other people and he's shutting you out. Or there's a guy on the other side of the ring that's only taking care of the guys around him or the friends. Or he says, "Yeah, buy them," and then looks away and then doesn't remember. Some of them were honest and some of them were not so honest. You had to contain your composure, just for the sake of the situation. And I think that's where, like, my calm demeanor helped me out. I consider myself a pretty, have a pretty good sense of humor. And those times would try to get me through, and that would kind of break the levity for me on some of those bad situations. But on the other hand, every now and then you'd have to explode on somebody and get your point across. And every now and then you'd have to suck it up and just call a spade and get out somewhere else and take that loss and know that, one, I'll be more clear when I show something to somebody, or if I try to sell something or buy something for somebody, or conversely, I'm not going to be doing business with that guy unless I absolutely have to.
Yeah, that's part of the acceptance of it all, right? And
exactly.
Most people down there had very difficult time accepting it, let alone being aware of it all, but accepting it. So they force, and force doesn't happen. As we learned in the commodity pits, energy, you can't force the energy. You got to accept the energy and work with it. And that's part of what we learn here in the core energy dynamics. But James is pointing out very specifically how it is. But it's not just one of the reasons why James is here, and we're talking about this in a little detail for the audience who have not been involved in the commodity pits or in the financial industry and whatnot, but particularly commodity pits, the energy there is very similar to our day-to-day activity. Why? Because we're dealing with stress. This is what the core energy dynamics helps with. It's really based about dealing with our everyday stress in different forms because we all have it in a different way. This is what we're talking about in the commodity pits. It's very extreme. But life can be very extreme on a daily basis to people. The outside influencers, as we talked about, come in. That's physical, mental, spiritual, environmental, emotional. And then we have, the disciplines that can bring us down from that. But the point being is that we don't want anyone in the audience to think that they are not part of what James and I have felt through the pits. You are, because James and I have brought this into it's everyday life. And I know I'm a better man for it, and I know James is a better man for it. And James, so thank you for sharing that. Just one thing before we touch into more of the transition in your life is you mentioned, decompressing. We all sort of had our own way. You mentioned alcohol and then the drug abuse that people would use or, other nefarious things that went on that you and I didn't engage in, thank God. And I do attribute that also to the fact of being an athlete myself, like you are. But what did you do before you stepped into that beautiful house filled of your lovely wife and your awesome children? And, what brought you back down into that core of James from a really say you had a really bad day and it was just bad in every way. What would you do to settle yourself before you walked in that front door?
Yeah, I mean, there was definitely over the years there were some tough times. Obviously, right? You're trying to build your nest egg. You got kids coming, you got communions and baptisms to pay for and whatnot. I mean, the toughest one is just trying to take some time for yourself and try to reflect, whether it's on the boat going home or the car ride getting back or the PATH train back over to Hoboken at the time when me and my wife were first living, then eventually when I moved down closer towards us by the shore, taking that time to kind of go over like, what could I have done better in that situation? What was I missing in that thing? Why was I taking that leap of faith thinking I could sell this and buy this across the ring and still make some money off of it and stuff like that? A lot of it is just, self-awareness, and trying to figure out, I got to be better than that. If I'm going to be in this situation, unless I'm ready to blow out. And there was a lot of guys, I mean, you know it better than anybody, right, Kurt? How many guys have we seen over the years that came into that situation that couldn't make it or that lost too much money that they couldn't afford to be there any longer, right? And it wasn't an environment full of, and that's the best part about that floor experience was it wasn't an environment of, college PhDs and this and that. There was guys that, had, barely had high school diplomas that could go down there. There was guys that were, Wharton school grads. There was guys that, well, the one guy, one of the best traders I remember seeing was a guy that was an electrician at the time and was fixing like a socket and working on the phones and kind of caught it in the back of his mind, like, hey, let me see. So I can sell January and buy March, and March is 4-bit over here, and I can or I can buy something over here and offset it and make money. So it was an eclectic group of individuals that were down there, and some were educated, some were not educated, but and then there's some had let's face it, some people just had balls, and gumption, and there was other guys that were very calculating. There was some guys that wouldn't open their mouth unless they definitely got a plum. I don't claim to be the smartest guy, but I definitely had a little more of the gumption to trust my own instincts on some stuff, and that was definitely a part of it. But as far as making sure that you leave that work persona when you leave the building, and then using that commute, whether it's across the river or underneath the river, to get out of the city. And some people did live in the city. That was key for a healthy lifestyle. As far as you don't want to. The worst thing you want to do is come home and kick the dog, right? in front of the kids, and I'm sure there was a lot of kicking proverbial dogs over the years. Being angry with your spouse or your parents or your in-laws or this and that. So there was definitely a challenge, trying to figure that out, especially when you're dealing with money. And I mean, listen, I was just driving home today from my other job, and I was talking to a buddy of mine who was an old trader, and I'm like, "How you doing?" He's like, "I got to be honest with you, I'm going through the worst stretch of my life." He goes, "And I got to take out the emotion because the emotion's killing me." And he kind of knows, and he's got other guys that are looking out for him. But that's when you got to kind of find your inner kind of compass and dig yourself out a little bit, or you got to figure out a new line of work.
Yeah. Wow, James, you're hitting on everything that we all go through. And this is not just in the commodity pits. We're using this as an example, audience, so we can let you know that this is in everyday life. As you know, everyone has their issues, right? Has their stress issues, and we have to deal with them. And James is laying out, the facts of how it was in the pits and how he was able to work with it. And very thankful, James, for you framing it so well for us today. And I do want to say one thing that sort of helped us in the pits and helps us in life too, is that we formed a success posse, right, James? To your point, we learned to trade with people that we knew were going to be honest, or we're going to honor our trades, and vice versa. So it was a win-win. A lot of the people in the pits would just look for that win. That goes on in regular life as well. You have sort of three types of people: the takers, the givers, and in between are the users. James and I happen to resonate from the people who serve, and there are plenty of takers and users in the world, and they're one way, and it's not about that. It's about helping one another out. So, back to the success posse, we had to work with people around us, and I had my own company and all my employees, because we don't succeed in isolation. We can't do it alone. James had mentioned that about
Huge.
some people in the pit, right? It's
Couldn't
just,
agree more.
it doesn't work. The same thing in life, in everyday life. This is just the pits that we experience. The energy there is a microcosm of what we experience in our life. Now, James and I are going to go forward here a little bit and then help unravel that. So, James, if you will, I just want to let the audience know, the commodity industry, the largest in the world, right? All countries dabble in commodities in some sort of way. So when the online business started kicking up, where did they go first? Well, they came to the largest business in the world, commodities. James and I and the thousands of other people that were in it, we weren't blindsided, but we were taken off the floor quicker than that was suggested to us, and the floor closed. So James and myself and all of us who wanted to continue on with purpose in our life found that very difficult to do. So James, if you will describe your transition from the floor and however you want to lay that out to where you are now, that would be great.
Sure. It changed. It changed very dramatically. I remember the first guy that was across the ring from me, he had a handheld computer in the ring. And he would just sit there and say, "Oh, really? You're for bid?" He looked down at his computer and be like, "Sold those." And you knew you were getting picked off. And like you said, it didn't take long for us to get, trading out of the pits onto, electronic trading platforms pretty quickly. I hung in there as long as I could. Eventually, me and my older brother Chris, who you know very well, we were looking for. Our dad was a New York City cop that switched to the New York City Fire Department and
God
retired
bless
from
him,
the New York
by the
City
way.
fireman. Yeah,
God bless.
So we come from humble beginnings. Our mom was. Took care of 5 kids, when we were little guys. And me and my brother Chris, my father had gotten out of the fire department. He was doing some stuff that you used to do, building houses and renovating and stuff like that, because he was a handy person. And then eventually he bought a bar in my hometown, which is kind of my first job. It's probably about 12 or 13 years old, sweeping up at my father's bar, growing up. But for me, it kind of gave me a better appreciation of different people and different lives. And like you just said, everybody has their own struggles, everybody has their own highs, everybody has their own lows. And that was, for me, an eye-opening experience. I remember specifically This is the one story I kind of tell people a lot. I remember bartending at my dad's bar at like 16 years old at the time. And I remember there was a lot of older guys who used to come in, and they weren't really, alcoholics per se, but, a bar and a restaurant back then was more of a place where, listen, women like to, go to a store or go shopping with each other or meet up in the park or be on the phone. Guys, we either need a VFW or a Knights of Columbus or, maybe a good local watering hole or gin mill, as they used to call them. And I remember meeting some of these older guys, and a lot of them were guys that were veterans of World War II, older guys. And they told me stories about how two of them in particular signed up for World War II when the one guy was 16 and the other guy was 15. And
Whoa.
back in the day, you could have your parents sign you out if you were 16 years old to go and fight for this country, right? I mean, it's unfathomable nowadays.
Totally.
I have a tough time, getting one of the kids to take the garbage out to the curb.
Yeah, right.
But my kids are great. Don't get me wrong. But I remember one guy said, "How'd you do it if you're only 15 years old?" He goes, I forged my parents' signature and I lied about my age because they didn't have any kind of computers back then. There was no background checks. You could come up with anything you want, but it just kind of blew my mind. That generation, the Tom Brokaw book of, the greatest generation. It still rings kind of true and stuff like that.
Great book. I agree. Yeah.
It's incredible. So that transition of, working at my dad's bar was something that once I left the floor, me and my brother Chris were looking at something to that. It's like, maybe we want to own a bar. Maybe we want to own a restaurant. We looked at a couple different places in the Monmouth County area. A couple good places, one down by the beach, a couple places in Red Bank, and then eventually my brother Chris kind of found the place that we have now called Val's Tavern. It was a family-run business since 1942. We bought it from the original owner's grandson and granddaughter, and we kind of fell into it a little bit, but I felt like that was going to be my transition out of commodities where you were making, one day you were making great money for a year, and then the next year you're cut in half. And then the next year you were cut in a quarter, and then all of a sudden you weren't making any money and you're losing money and you're going in every day. So you had to pick yourself up by the boots and figure something else out. Fortunately, I had a couple good years, so I had a little bit of startup money to get the restaurant, but we took a loan and tried building it back together, and that's kind of got me through to the bar business portion of my life, which was not the last stop for my transitioning, as you say.
Yeah, let's just go into Val's a little bit because you guys came into, as you mentioned, a family-owned business. It was Italian cuisine-based. The Chambronis had owned it since when?
1942.
Yeah, 42. So all those times with one owner, and then you guys come in, and it's like, hey, who the heck are these guys? Now, a lot of us knew you and Chris from our previous careers and life, if you will. But, coming into the restaurant business is not easy, as you know. You've been in it, as you mentioned, all your life. But, boy, did you create a fantastic culture, James. Really.
Thank you.
Yes. And if you would describe that to us, how did you do that? Where did you draw upon that? Because it's a different shift of energy and culture than the pits were, for sure. This is a lot calmer, although, the bar business can be, has its difficulties. But anyway, I'll let you go there.
Sure. Yeah, well, so I kind of grew up in the bar business with my dad as, even when I was in college, I'd come home and I'd bartend on the weekends, and I know my brother Chris would do as well. And there was a point in my life where I broke my leg coming out of high school, and instead of going to a university, I went to a local community school, and then I was bouncing at a couple different places and bartending, whether it was Hunter Mountain and then out to the Hamptons for a little bit. And
nice.
Then eventually I went back to play football and went to a Bloomsburg University where I graduated. So I kind of knew the bar business. I always liked the bar business. I'm a people guy personally. I love learning about other people. I love connecting with people. I guess maybe it's because it's my size. A lot of people know me from meet me once. I kind of joke about you see me once, it's like seeing an elephant in the woods. You know me for life. But I do enjoy the personal side. That we talk about numerous times of people's own kind of beliefs and their person and their struggles and their triumphs. And I like trying to be in that area. And that's where the bar and restaurant business is. A lot of it is, it's, in that business, it's more about when people go there, it's a stress relief, right? They don't have to make food for their kids. They're going to bring them to a restaurant, and you're going to get that kind of experience. And that's what we try to do. We want to kind of kill people with kindness. It's a mom and pop place. We decided to keep the same name because we knew it had a great name. We definitely had our pushback in the beginning. A lot of locals probably didn't like it and stuff like that. They'd say, "Oh, what are you going to do with the place?" I'm like, "Sushi. Everybody likes sushi, right?"
Right.
Turn it into a sushi place. But, and we kept all the existing staff. Eventually, some stayed with us for a long time and some, left earlier than most, not on our choice. But, it was a transition. It took us a while, the X's and O's of being a bartender don't really translate, and a bouncer translate into, food costs and what a menu, what every dish costs you, and labor costs. And there's definitely percentages that you have to kind of learn. And there's no book for it. You got to kind of learn it on the fly. Fortunately, my partner Chris is a very bright guy, and he helped us transition to a lot of it. I think I have the personable factor to both of us, I think, help us as well.
Yeah, I absolutely. I was going to tag on to that, but I just wanted to say, change equals awareness plus understanding. So that's what you were describing there when you're transitioning from the floor into the restaurant business. You took that, and our emotions are energy in motion to the point we've been discussing, and the fact that you are such a personable individual, man, you can relate to all ages, and I do mean all ages. You've proven it over and over again, even the pits, different ages. But we're talking about vowels now, and never a nary word spoken about vowels. I got to tell you, and I do want to give you guys gratitude and all for sure. This community is not an easy community when you first move in here. That's very important to understand, and that's for various reasons. But the bottom line is, again, understanding what you needed to do and executing it is really interesting, and it's like people get fearful. And we have to remember, fear is a reaction, right? That's simply all it is. And that, courage is a decision. And James.smith, you are filled with courage, my friend. That's for sure. So congratulations on, Val's and the continued success. We all promote it. I've been here a majority of my life, and there is nothing better than knowing to hear good friends like you being talked about at other restaurants. Let's go to Val's instead of here. Val's is great in this way, that way. I'm meeting my buddies at Val or whoever. Again, like you said, it is a bit of a meeting place, but people have comfort there. Energy, again, energy. The energy that you bring there is calming, and it's fun. And then when you have the bands and everyone's dancing together, there's never a fight. There's never any disruptions. Very, very rare. And you guys, you deliver that to the public, James. So really, congratulations on that. You definitely found your flow, right? You went from your zone and your flow in the pits to having to make a transition, massive, into Val's and shifting your energy oh so well. And so let's take it one more step, because there is another layer to James here about you, not just from the commodities with you and Chris and then Val's, but now you're off doing something else as well. If you'd like to expound upon that a little bit, that'd be great.
Yeah, sure. So, listen, like you said, when it comes to Val's, it's a family-run business. There's two, and me and Chris are two family guys who both have 4 kids and loving wives that understand. And like you said, we want to be part of the community. I think that's what the best part about Val's is. I want Kurt Bruckman to bring his kids and his grandkids there and have a good time. And we never shy away from letting people bring kids or grandkids, and we want to have a good time. I want you to bring your parents, if they're still alive, God willing, and have a good time. And it's kind of a meeting place.
If I may, I'm sorry to interrupt, but if I may, and the part of the other beauty is that you engage with the community to work. The high school kids to come in to work. The college kids who are looking for something to do or need to work during the summer season or even the holidays. holiday season, and you have repeats. So that speaks volumes. I do want to say that's very special. Not many people do that. Not many restaurants. So
Yeah,
anyway,
no, we pride ourselves in using a lot of local people's kids, whether they're friends or not. If they come in, we're going to give them a job and give them a shot. And it's fun to see. It's an eye-opening experience. Some of these younger kids that are so shy, sometimes scared of their own shadow, and a year or two down the line, they're vivacious. They understand people skills. They know how to talk to clients. They know it's about networking, right? I mean, as me and you've talked about, like later on in life. But I loved it. But eventually at some point, the bar restaurant business sometimes is not conducive when it comes to late nights and having young kids and missing sports and stuff like that. So I quickly realized after a couple of years of running it with Chris that, listen, there's only a certain amount of money you're going to be able to make, and you could jeopardize your family or your wife or this and that if you're continuing that pace of 75, 80 hours a week at times. So we've made the calculated decision to say, listen, we need to bring in a manager to kind of help us run things as well. Even though me and Chris are, owner operators and are there to day-to-day business at all times. Now we have like a kitchen manager, and we have a great manager in a guy, John Gibney, and a guy, Mike Morrison. And we've had some very good managers over the year. We had one of the original managers that owned the place, Billy Crow, who was great. But I realized that, I'm going to work 80, 85 hours a week, and you're only going to make a certain amount. But with a wife and 4 kids in this day and age, especially in this setting where we live, in Monmouth County, I knew I had to do something else. So I had a friend of mine at the time. I was living in Homedale, which was a town away. And he's like, you know what, James, you got good, you got a good way about yourself. You're good with people. You care about individuals. You have a very good knowledge of markets. And would you ever think about financial advising? I said, I don't really know a ton about it, but I'd love to try to learn. So at the age of 39 to 40, I went back to school. I had to transition again. Had to rely on my heart and my nerve, and and study, and courage, and study for my Series 7, and study for my 66, the 63, 65. I got my health and life. I started working for Merrill Lynch. Eventually, when I had the bar, I was driving up to Merrill Lynch, which was in Summit, which is, with no traffic, it takes you 50 minutes. On Thursday and Fridays, it would take you an hour and a half coming home. And then I'd come home, I'd drop my bag off, I'd hug my wife and kids, and I'd have to shoot down to Val's, and which was 25 minutes away, a half hour there. Work the night and then go home, and then you're getting home at 12:30, 1 o'clock at night. So eventually, I made that decision to move from Homedale, move to Rumson. That was a big help for me transitioning wise. Like, the schools are the same. Sports are probably a little better here, but you're also 5 minutes from the beach, and it's a win-win for the family and the kids. And then I was working with Morgan Stanley for about 12 years as a financial advisor, and I had recently just moved to a new group based out of Mount Laurel, where I go down there a couple times a week. But it's a great group of individuals. It's through LPL Financial, but the name of the group is called Peak Wealth Partners, and it's run by a couple of great guys, Jamie Beraldi and Chris Wendt, and have like 3 assistants that are great, Jill, Amy, and Dana, and I got a couple of other guys like Logan to help me out, and some guys out in Long Island. But it's an all-encompassing team, where when I was at Morgan Stanley, it was good, but I was kind of a solo guy, and I partnered with a couple guys, and I wasn't really getting a fair shake with a lot of them, and wasn't getting a fair shake with the payouts and stuff like that. So now I finally feel like I've found my niche. We got some good managers at Val's that help running it. I'm still there probably 30 to 40 hours a week here and there. And I'm getting to see my kids' sports. They're pretty athletic themselves. I got 2 playing college football. One's playing high school basketball. One just got done. But it gets me back to my roots, where I'm still helping people. I'm helping guide people in their next careers into retirement, making sure they have successful retirements, and watching out for their money. And the one thing I'd say to people is, I'm going to watch it the same way I'm watching my stuff, I'm watching my brother's stuff, or I'm watching my parents' stuff. And it's good. I enjoy learning it, and I enjoyed the camaraderie and the meeting new people and trying to figure things out for people.
That's excellent. It is so you, if I may, James, knowing you as well as I do and, watch it over all these years, you're a very special and unique individual in this particular way. Your empathy and yes, absolutely. And your sympathy for others is tremendous, but you take action. You just don't speak the words. You speak your word and you walk the walk the talk. That is big, and you're a very good example for all of us, James. And you've been delivering excellent information today, invaluable for the audience, and I really appreciate all that you've done. Awesome stuff. So before we sign off, and I do want to. Ask you one last question, then I'm going to ask you to tell us where we can reach you in every way. So we'll advertise that a bit. But the last question being, James, is this: you're a blank piece of paper. You're a white sheet right now, right? Everything we talked about is not here. The world today, as we know it, is extremely chaotic. And talk about stress. It's in a big means of stress, and we're in this massive transition. James, what would you like to see and tell the world in this moment you could do and would like to see happen to others to make it a better place?
Yeah, I think listen. I think what gets me by a lot of times is the levity of just trying to have a sense of humor about stuff. Right. I think that's one thing that a lot of people enjoy. I think that it can break a lot of stressful situations. Sense of humor. But as far as the world and the chaoticness of the world, like I think you just got to take it, one day at a time. Like it's not about yesterday. It's not about what's in the future. It's about what's in front of you right now. I think that's the biggest takeaway you can from that. The other thing is, the good part about sports and where we work down on the commodities exchange and then the restaurant business, and as I'm learning through the financial advising business that I've been doing for the last 14 years, is everybody is the same at some point. Doesn't matter your religion, doesn't matter the color of your skin, doesn't matter your preferences and stuff like that. I think if we can take a step back from pointing fingers at people and saying you're not alike and I don't like what he's doing or what they're doing, I think if you can put yourself in other people's shoes and try to have some, like you said earlier, empathy for the situation or for what somebody else might be going through that you don't know about. I know that I came to you a couple of years ago when you were starting your transition into your new career, and you were very helpful for me and very helpful for a family member of mine that you were specifically helping and didn't want anything for it, which was incredible. It shows the character and the person that you are, and I won't forget it. And that's why every time I see you, I try to give you a bro hug and
Yeah.
and thank you for what you've done. And that person in the family is doing quite well, actually.
Good, great.
We can catch up as well, and I'm doing better myself. With following a little bit of your path and your teachings and what you've learned and what you've immersed yourself in over the last couple of years has really kind of helped straighten some of the curves in life that you come across. Because I was talking to one of my kids about this today. It's like, whether it's a tough boss someday or a child that you may have that's not feeling well and stuff like that, everybody's going to, or it could be a parent that's being sick or somebody in your life that was close to you that passed away. Everybody's going to have those in their lives. It's how you kind of, compartmentalize it and plow ahead, because we all only have one life. You might as well try to do it with as much integrity and just compassion as you can, for other people. And I think if you do that, you'll have a successful life. And it's not about monetarily. It's more about when you leave this fine world, you'll leave a remembrance of people that can carry your kind of thoughts and your kind of intuition on life and how you should really try to help people.
Well, you certainly laid out a great legacy, James, that we should all abide by. And, thank you for all your compliments. But I do want to say you have you are very aware of what it means to be present in the moment, and this is part of your success. Remember, success is in the moment. It's not just a final product. And also the realization that the past is, the past. We can reflect. That's it. Don't stay. We know what happens there. The draining catabolic, dumps we get. Don't project too much because, again, the same thing there. It doesn't always come out that way. Most of the time, not. And to come into the now and to execute ourselves in it. And James, you're there. And it's really great to see how you've transitioned, and from your childhood into your days in sports, as an athlete. Right on through to the floor, to Val's, to now being an account executive, all different types of energy, but you've been able to mitigate and work with it all the way through, taking care of your family as well as a priority. All of that, it sounds so overwhelming, but to your point, it's not. Don't judge is what you were just pointing to, and make light and have happiness in your heart. Bring happiness in your heart, because the moments that are difficult and are strangulating are going to move away in time. As you and I both learned quickly in the pits, that one trade that we hated is going to dissipate and go on. We're going to have another opportunity. And being able to stay in present, like you've been pointing out throughout this whole conversation, is part of the key to it. It's part of the key to stay in the moment, alleviate the stress, and concentrate on what's at hand. And so important. So thank you for answering all these questions, James, and for being involved in today's conversation. I know the audience got a tremendous amount. And audience, if you're going to take any guidelines from anything, it's in this conversation with James. He really did delve deep into what it means to work your core energy and to trust your process, is what James has done. And he's continues to be the successful man that he is and always will be. So thank you very much for that, James. Now, if you will, before we sign off, if you could tell the audience where we could find James in every way, please.
Yeah, well, thank you, Kurt. Number one, thank you very much, and thank you also to your assistant, Alex.
Yes.
Appreciate the opportunity to be here and to kind of just share my story. You can always find me, James.smith, at Val's Tavern in Rumson, New Jersey. Me and my brother Chris own it, with my wife Julie and his wife Linda. And you can also find me on football fields on the weekends watching my three sons play, or a basketball court watching my daughter play at RFH. But you can also, if you ever need help with something, I'm always around. You can find me at Val's. You can also, if you need help with any kind of financial decisions, everyday life stuff, any kind of transition you're having in your life that you're not sure of, you can reach me at James.b.smith at lpl.com, or James.smith at Peak Wealth Partners. That's the new advisory team I'm on, with like 6 advisors and 3 CSAs and 2 financial planners. So I enjoy that part of my business too. But again, I appreciate everything. And I think that, as you were just kind of following up there, I think that a big key takeaway, and it took me a little while to figure out, is, if things go wrong in your life or somebody doesn't do you right, you just gotta kind of leave that behind you, the anger behind you, because it doesn't help you at all. It it sits with you too long, and it clouds your judgment on some stuff. So, just try to move on with your life, and we all have challenges, and reach out to guys like Kurt Bruckman that can help you, figure some of those inner workings of your self-esteem and your self-confidence, and how you can kind of figure this thing out we call life.
Yes, exactly. Well, thank you very much for all that, James. Again, and the core energy experience and the dynamics of it all is something that we all have inside, and James has, laid it out for us all today, that we're all capable of doing it. So that's fabulous. So thank you very much, James, for that. Audience, thank you for joining us today. We really enjoyed having you on, and I do want to say, now remember, your mind is your powered, so stay empowered.